Today we're talking camera gear, specifically what's in my camera bag and my everyday carry setup. So let's get into it right now. So I've always been into camera gear, but one of my favorite things about it is how I can always slim down my setup to be just like the bare minimum to basically fit in this bag and nothing else. So over the years now, I've kind of basically dialed in what I think is like my perfect setup that pretty much just honestly had me covered for any shoot that comes up. Sure, a couple things might be added or taken away, but for the most part, I can practically cover any gig with what's in this bag. So of course, let's first start with the camera bag. I'm gonna touch on this really quickly because this isn't a new bag, and this is honestly a bag that's been with me for now 3 to 4 years, and it still is in like perfect condition. It's a freaking tank. This is the Tenba Axis 24L. This thing has gone with me all over the place too. Hundreds of gigs around here in Houston area, Texas, Austin, San Antonio, places like Hawaii, Mexico, where else? Favorite thing about this is why I still have kept it this whole time is because it is so padded. When this thing is full, it still feels comfortable. It's really great, and it's done me really good. The straps haven't been messed up or anything, and other friends that have worn this bag, when it's full, they're like, man, this thing is really good on your back and just really sturdy. So that's one of my favorite things about it. So this is how I pretty much have my bag laid out. I have a couple lenses. This is where my camera would go, and then I have a drone. This is hard to do. Then I have my drone stuff on this side, some accessories over here. Okay, so my camera of choice is the Canon R6, which is filming me right now. I bought this camera about 3 to 4 months ago, and it's been the best upgrade I've used ever because I upgraded from a 5D Mark IV. I've already made 2 videos on this camera, which I'll link them up here. But I have so many good things to say about this camera. Everything from the amazing autofocus, the incredible low light performance, all the video features that are packed in here like C-Log and C-Log 3 now. The 10-bit color, so the grades hold up. The IBIS is so good, and I'll get into that, which is why I have specific lenses in here now. And the photo quality for 20 megapixels honestly sometimes looks better than higher megapixel cameras. So this camera basically has me covered for anything and everything. Obviously great for YouTube stuff with the flip screen and just the great autofocus. So it's an overall win, and I was honestly hesitant about it because of all the people talking about the overheating problems and things like that. And I'm not gonna get into it, but for me, honestly, it's never affected my workflow because if I can get like 40 to 45 minutes in 4K, which is more than plenty, it does the job fine. Okay, so next up is gonna be the most used lens in my bag, and that is the 16 to 35. So I've been using this lens now for a couple years, and I basically can use it for almost 90% of my work, which is real estate. 16 millimeters is a perfect focal length for real estate. Also, you can zoom in to 35, which is great if you wanna get a different perspective. But honestly, most of the time, this lens just sits at 16 millimeters, and it's great. It's an awesome perspective for also vlogging, YouTube stuff, any handheld things, landscape photography, anything that you need wide shots. And another bonus about this lens is this lens has image stabilization, which means that you can basically get stabilized shots handheld and then also pair this with the IBIS and the Canon R6, and you have an amazing handheld lens. The only drawback about this lens is it is an f4. The next level version of this one is the 16 to 35 2.8 version 3, and also the new RF lenses. But those are gonna be over $2,000, and this thing is half the cost of that. Whoa. So honestly, really no complaints other than the f4, but now with the amazing low light performance on the R6, it still isn't a problem, honestly. And on my old camera, on my 5D Mark IV during video, it was never like the sharpest lens, but now in 4K on the R6 and the nicer sensor, it's awesome. I really can't tell the difference. It looks really good. Next up, this is a new addition to my everyday carry kit, and let me explain why. This is the Canon 24 to 70 2.8. I've also had this lens for about 2 years now, and I specifically only picked it up for wedding photography. When I was doing a lot of weddings, this is basically like the best ceremony lens if you have on one of your cameras, or if you're using one camera, because you're covered from 24 mil to 70 millimeters, and it's in 2.8 constant. So At 70 millimeters 2.8, it looks like a prime lens, and 70 millimeters is such a flattering focal length. It's probably one of my favorite focal lengths for like portraits or people or anything like that, because 50 is really nice, but 70 just looks even more natural, so I love that. And then 24 mil, 35, all of your classic focal lengths, which are really good, have you covered in this, and it's a super sharp lens. And then again, with the R6, now that it has IBIS, the better sensor, the images look even better, and the video is also even better. Whenever I had this lens, it was really hard to shoot video with it, especially if I had it on a gimbal. My old camera didn't have any sort of IBIS or anything like that. Balancing it on a gimbal at like 70 millimeters never really worked, and I would still always get some shakes, even if it was like perfectly balanced and I was really still. So it was always kind of a bummer, so I never really used it for B-roll or shots like that. Now with the R6 having IBIS, I can hold shots at 70 millimeters and it's gonna look 100% smooth and stable. Whether it's real time or slow motion shots, it kind of just opened up a whole new world for this lens and made it so much better because, again, for photography, it's gonna be super stable, slow shutter shots that are gonna be sharp. And for video, I can now shoot like in 60 frames per second or 24 frames per second or even 120 for that matter at 70 millimeters handheld, and it looks great. It's such a just different world of filming now because it wasn't possible before, and now the stuff looks really good and smooth. So that's why this has been a new addition to my kit, because I just felt like I couldn't get the best shots or I was just really limited, and now it's a world of difference. This is the Sigma 50mm 1.4 art lens. This is probably one of the sharpest 50mm lenses ever made. And again, on the R6, it's even sharper and nicer and easier to use. So this is basically my go-to for portrait work, anything that's low light, like at weddings or really artistic shots, because you can stop it down to 1.4 and it's super sharp. Video stuff also looks great because it's like a really compressed telephoto look. And I also love to use this now for real estate work. I've been using it more than my 35, which is up on my shelf, for detail shots, again, because it's so much easier with this camera. So it works pretty well. And those are basically the 3 lenses that I keep in my bag now. Other than that, I sometimes swap out for my 35 or my 24-1.4, which is filming me right now. Sometimes that's a really creative focal length for photo shoots. But other than that, these are like the main lenses I have right now. Next up, we're gonna get into my drone. Mavic Air 2. This is a drone I've had now for a little over a year and it's fantastic. I know the Mavic Air 2S is out, which is basically like an upgraded version of this with better quality, better log, and better color profiles. But for me, again, for YouTube stuff, for real estate work, this thing works awesome. I use this for real estate all the time. It does 4K up to 4K 60, which is really cool. I basically keep this on 4K 30 all the time. I never really need 4K 60 unless I'm filming something that's moving, but it's usually just houses. I really don't have any complaints. Obviously the Mavic Air 2S is nicer with 10-bit color. This one only has 8-bit, but I've never seen it really fall apart, and I always shoot in decent-alike grades just fine. So only other attachment I have on here is a variable ND filter by Moment. You can go from 2 to 5 stops, which is really cool. Depending if it's a really super sunny day, I'll have it at like 4 or 5. Otherwise, it just sits at 2 and gets you a really nice image. So that's a really cool touch. Only drawback I would really say for the Mavic Air 2 series is you get this really big remote, but it feels a lot better in your hand than the other smaller controller. Just for me, it just feels a lot nicer and it's easier to hold. I mean, it does take up like a big slot, and it's as big as the drone. Like, look at that. But I'm willing to work with it because it works easier for me, so I'm okay with that. And the last biggest perk about this drone is the size factor. I mean, come on. It's literally this big. It fits in my camera bag perfectly fine, snug in one of these little compartments, and I don't have to carry an extra case, an extra bag. I just want everything to fit in here, and that's what I want to use. And so it's smaller than my old drone, which was the Mavic Pro, so I'm even happier about that because it's smaller and it looks better. So now let's get into some filters and accessories. So here I basically have a filter pouch, and I only use 2 filters. First up is a Moment variable ND filter. Looks great. There hardly is any color cast. So I always have this on for vlogging, for exterior shots, like if I'm filming people outside and it's a really bright day. And if I want to do any long exposure photography, that's on here. Next, the other lens that I use specifically for real estate that sits in my bag is a polarizer filter. This is by Tiffin. Basically, I'm gonna link up a video where I have a BTS of me doing a real estate shoot, but To summarize, this basically can darken your blue skies, making them look more saturated and nicer, and gets rid of wood floor reflections or any types of reflections that you have in your shot. So if you're ever photographing a house and there's a lot of, light coming in from the window and it's casting so bright on the wood floor to where you can't even see any detail in it, twisting this lens to find the sweet spot for it is gonna basically get rid of that to make your image nicer. And then some wipe cloths. These are by Zeiss. My friend Nick gave these to me. Lens cloths. Always have lens cloths along with this one, lens cloth, because sometimes when I'm on shoots with some of my friends, they always forget to basically wipe their lenses down and there's a whole bunch of dust and stuff. And for me, it has to be perfectly clear. It's just one of those things that I'm it might mess up the shot. So always have some of these. I used one today actually at the shoot this morning. So good use out of them. This is a wide angle lens attachment for my iPhone, and basically it's a 18mm full frame equivalent lens attachment, and it's pretty awesome. I've had this for, again, a couple years now. I think 2 years. I've made a video on it. I'll link it up below, but this thing is super cool. And the thing that's great about it though is it's super sharp. And then another really cool thing about it is on the iPhone, if you shoot in portrait mode, and you put this on, you get a really wide portrait, which I'll show an example here, and it looks really cool, which you can't really do on the iPhone. So I have a total of 5 batteries, but I honestly only need 3. I never really have the need to use more. Even at weddings, I think 3 is plenty. But I have just, I've kept them around, and especially I really want the new batteries. The ones that came with the R6 have I think 10 or 15% more capacity in them, so I might start replacing them and just, get 2 more, have 3, and get rid of these. Okay, and then next up is the microphone. So this is the Mirfac Audio N2. So this is one of my cheaper microphones. This is how big it is. Made a review on this guy, I'll link it up below. The windscreen is really big for it, but this is a really cool mic because it actually sounds pretty good for the price point. And I basically keep this in my bag because it's super small, and I use it for all my vlogging stuff now. I love the Rode VideoMic Pro Plus. That's what's on my, that's what we're listening to right now. I have it right now for this setup, but I always use that for interviews, other high-end stuff, but for YouTube and vlogging and things like that, this is typically what's in my bag. So lastly, I have my little accessories pouch. Let me show you what's in here. So starting right here, we have an iPhone cable, we have headphones for my camera, and then we have, this tool is super cool. This is one of those tools that you need in your bag because it has everything you need for any type of photo or video shoot. I use this one all the time, basically to screw on plates, screw off, if you need a screwdriver, any sort of different attachment. This is great. I think it's by Small Rig. All the things that I've talked about are linked below, of course. So that sits right in here. This came with my Mavic Air 2. This is just a little filter kit. They came with other NDs, so I keep the one that it came with on the drone and then the 2 other ones in here. Pretty cool. A little lens cleaner by Moment. And then a USB to USB-C cable. I feel I don't really know why that one's in there. I feel one time I needed one and it wasn't in there. Then on the other side, we have gaff tape. This is an essential for photographers and videographers, an extra mounting plate, a Sharpie. If I write on something like this with some gaff tape, and then I'll write something on there, and a square because everyone needs one, and that's it. Pro tip, always keep a protein bar as a backup in your bag. These are Go Macro bars. Really like these. My friend Taylor introduced these to me. I always just keep one in my bag as a backup because half the time you're on a shoot and it's dragging and you're super hungry, and so that'll hold you over. I have a couple backup memory cards, a 64 and a 128, and I film on a 128, and then I have one for my drone also. I have SanDisk Extreme all the way across for my camera, my drone. They're all 128 gigabytes, the fastest speeds. Those have just never failed on me, and they're, 128 or 64 is honestly plenty for the type of content I make, even filming in 4K on the R6. So those have always done me well, so I'm not gonna try and change it out for other brands. So that's pretty much it. That's what I carry in my bag every day. If I'm headed out to a shoot and I've never shot with this client before and we're doing some type of shoot, this is pretty much what I'm gonna bring, because this will have me covered for everything and anything I'm gonna do. If anything, I'm gonna make my kit even smaller if I already know the type of shoot. For example, if I'm doing a real estate shoot, I'm not gonna bring my 24-70, I'm just gonna bring my 50 and my 16. And if I'm doing a headshot gig, which I did this morning, actually before this, I only brought my 50mm and my 24-70 in case I wanted a little bit depth in the shot. So now my next step is basically trying to slim down this even more. I'm finally gonna start looking into a new camera bag. I'm really interested in one of those like everyday carry bags, because while this is awesome, it's really overkill for a lot of the stuff that I do now. Like if I go out and I wanna do a small video shoot or a YouTube video, I don't need to bring this. I just want like a small bag that can carry 1 to 2 lenses, my camera. Probably don't need to carry my drone all the time. I haven't just been using it unless it's for jobs. So that's pretty much it for this video, guys. Leave a like if you enjoyed, comment down your thoughts. I would love to find out what's in your kit, your everyday carry setup, and subscribe if you haven't already. I would love for you guys to be part of the channel, and I'll see you guys in the next video. See you.